A good tavach, and welcome to. I think we're heading into our third week of 30 letters in 30 days. Baruch Hashem, today was Reish Chodesh Nisan. Don't forget the Nasi. And that means that we are 11 days from Yud Aleph Nisan. So I want to encourage everybody who's been enjoying 30 letters in 30 days, whether you were with us from the very first year or you joined somewhere along the way, let's try to add in the Pearson, publicizing, letting people know about this incredible hachana. If you're enjoying this, if this has meant something to you, please tell your friends, let them know about what we're doing. And it's a good time now. It's Reish Chodesh Nisan. It's a good time to push. All right. Let's look at tonight's letter. Letter number 21. Baruch Hashem Yud Aleph Shvat Tovshin Tesvav Brooklyn Shalom Uvracha. The 11th day of Shvat. The last letter we read was from Yud Shvat, the previous day. This is now the day after Yud Shvat. Shalom Avracha, meaning the Rebbe is writing to a man. And from the context of the letter, it seems that this is a chassid who is giving classes. I don't know if this is a shliach or if this is an askun or somebody who works at a yeshiva. It's really not 100% clear, but it seems that this person is... Well, it's pretty clear they're teaching Chassidus, as will be evident from the letter. And that's about what I can surmise. La'achre shesikose hachi. I'm going to just silence that. La'achre shesikose hachi aruka. After a very long silence. See, we've had this before where the Rebbe is mentioning to people that he has not heard from them in a long time and wondering what is up with that. Why the silence? Why is it taking you so long to write to me? Now, we've had this before where the Rebbe says you need to write more often. Tonight's letter, actually, and I want to warn everybody, is a little bit intense as far as one of the implications of not writing often enough. And I'm going to give you fair warning that it can read a bit harsh and maybe even a little bit scary, but we're going to read through it. We're going to talk about it, and it's going to be okay. Let's find out. The truth can't hurt us. So let's find out the implications of not writing very often. We've seen the Rebbe mention to people that haven't written for a while. Tonight is going to reveal a new insight into that. Okay. Hine seif niskabel michtove 31:1. I'm assuming that Rebbe used that way of referring to the date, meaning January 31st. I'm assuming because that's the way the person dated their letter, because you don't find this very often in the Rebbe's letters, in the Rebbe's Hebrew letters or Yiddish letters, that the Rebbe should even mention an English date, let alone use that as the way of referring to a letter. So I'm assuming that's the way that the person dated his letter. So at any rate, after a long silence, I finally got your letter. Saif means like, finally, at long last, I got your letter from January 31st. Ubevadai nisparsmu besecheche hatmimim vegam anash divrei kvei kedushis meiri v'chomi admor bal hayelula. Certainly, it has been publicized. It is well known, meaning it's not a secret thing, that which my father-in-law, whose yahrzeit was just yesterday, has said. So the Rebbe is saying, you haven't heard from you a long time. I finally got your letter, and I want to mention something to you that I'm sure is not the first time you've heard. That's why I'm assuming this is a chassid. In addition to the fact that the person is teaching chassidus is evident from the rest of the letter, but the Rebbe is saying, I'm sure you've heard, because all the chassidim have heard this thing that my father-in-law used to say. And what is that? B'hanegeya to tsar chassidim, about those people who are called tsar chassidim. Here the Rebbe calls it tsar chassidim. In other places it's called tzoros chassidim, the plural. Tsar means problems, pain, grief. Tzoros is just the plural of that. Sometimes we say it, we slur it, and we say it fast. Tzoros, or some people's accent even tzuris. But you say tzoros chassidim. Tzoros chassidim literally means those chassidim who have problems. Well, we all have problems. So who's that describing? Let's find out. Who are these tzoros or tsar chassidim? Ubeir es dvarav, he explained, meaning the Frierdiker Rebbe explained his words. Sheyeshnam ke'elu, there are such people, shaboyim biksuvim, who write to the Rebbe, who correspond, Rak Rachmana litzlan, only may the merciful one protect us. Kasher Eira is a tsar v'agbas nefesh chas v'shalom, when they have some pain or some aggravation. Adkan l'sheinei, that's the end of the quote. There's a letter. There are many places where the Frierdiker Rebbe refers to tzoros chassidim, but there's one letter that I saw recently where the Frierdiker Rebbe is writing to somebody who wrote to him about some problems, and the Frierdiker Rebbe says, I'm sure you've heard what I've said before about tzoros chassidim, and the people who I only hear from them when they want something. I only hear from them when they have a problem, and which is okay, that's part of the Rebbe Chassid relationship, but I only hear from them then. And they have to realize that the main aspect of the Chassid Rebbe relationship is that the Chassid is doing the things that a Chassid is supposed to do. So to them, when do they think of the Rebbe? When they have a problem. But I want them to think of the Rebbe. This is the letter from the Frierdiker Rebbe I saw, where he's saying, I want them to think of the Rebbe when they have to think about their duties, about their side of the relationship, meaning learning Chassidus and following Chassidish customs and practices. So, in other words, it can't just be that you think of the Rebbe when you need something. You have to think about also your side of the relationship. That's how I saw the Frierdiker Rebbe explain it. It seems from this letter, and I don't know if this is the Rebbe's Chiddush or the Rebbe is just explaining it more, but what we're about to see here from the Rebbe is a whole other level of this idea. Let's look inside. Utmiya shekanira gam hu ritzayni le'konis b'sug zeh. It's baffling to me that you would want to be in this category, that you would want to be that kind of a chassid. Ubemele, and that therefore, kisherotzu sheyedia al dvar kvi yashir. When they wanted, who's they? They say, they. In Yiddish, you would say men, like, as mahot gavolt, that when it was wanted, you would say it like in the passive in English, when it was the desirable thing, when it was deemed correct that you should be writing to me to let me know about setting up the shir, the class, the Torah class. It's a class in Chassidus, as apparent from the context of the letter. So when it was deemed appropriate, you can say you want to be spiritual, you could say on high, in the spiritual courts, whatever it is. The point is, when the time came that it was the right thing for you to let me know about your starting this new class, there was no other way to get you to do so, ella except shia inyan shel agmas nefesh, if you would have a problem. Rachmona litzlan, may the merciful protect us. Ubemela, and therefore sheleach michtov. You sent because you have a problem, you'll send a letter. Ubemela gam kain, and then also, meaning like, incidentally, now that you're writing about your problem, Meidi al dvar shiurim, you'll let me know about the new class, or classes, says here plural. What is the Rebbe saying here? The implication is pretty clear. You weren't going to write to me to let me know good news about starting the new class until you had a problem. And then when you had a problem, you also happen to mention, as long as you're writing, that you started a new class. And maybe, just maybe, and we have to be very careful how we're reading this. Maybe, just maybe, if you would have written to me about good news in the first place, you wouldn't have had to write to me about bad news. Now, I am filling in a little bit of the gaps here. The Rebbe says it fairly clearly, that when it was deemed that you should be writing to me about the shir, there was no other way to get you to do so than to have you have some agmas nefesh. So therefore, the agmas nefesh came about so that you would write and also let me know about the shir. So the Rebbe is kind of saying it pretty clearly. There are other letters in the Igros. The Rebbe says similar things about tzaras chasidim, and you weren't going to write to me, and I was waiting for good news, and now I finally hear the good news, but it's only because you're writing to me about the problem. Okay. I want to be very careful that we don't read this, and I'll just say it. I'll say the elephant in the room, because why not? I mean, if anyone out there is thinking it, then I think it's more helpful to say it. Maybe someone's hearing this and like, is the Rebbe, like, God forbid, is the Rebbe like blackmailing this guy? Like, if you want to have a good life, you better write to me more often? Is that what the Rebbe is saying? Look, I'll say it, because if someone out there is thinking it, then it's better I should say it and talk it through than to let somebody come away with that impression. No, God forbid, that's not what the Rebbe is saying. So how do I understand this? What is the Rebbe saying? So let's go further in the letter. And I think the explanation, if we take it slowly and we unpack it, it's incredibly powerful in its way of conveying the way the world works, the way that our mentality has an influence on the way the world works, on how the subjective affects the objective, on the power of positive thinking, on how our accountability to the Rebbe actually makes our life objectively better, and a lot of stuff like that, which I'm just now saying a bunch of stuff that's flying in the air. Let's ground it. Let's go back into the text, and I hope you're going to see how this is very clear here. Okay, let's look back inside. V'harei toiv toiv hoya, it would have been so good, and it would be so good. L'chol hatzdadim, to all, you could read that as all parties involved, or from every angle, or in all aspects of the situation. Im hoyu anash misraglim lichtev, if Chassidim would just habituate themselves to write to the Rebbe, ulaheidia, and to inform the Rebbe, al kol inyan shel simcha, about every good thing. It would be very good if the Chassidim would just make it a habit that they should write to the Rebbe regularly about every happy thing they can report. Okay? Ubemele, and therefore, consequently, hoyahergol naisa teva, habit becomes nature, becomes a second nature. It says that in Tanya, that habit can become nature. Nature is deeper than habit. Nature is innate. It means that's factory default settings that you were born with. Habit is something that you had to accustom yourself to. But after a while, habit can even become like nature. It can become that deeply implanted. So the Rebbe is saying like this: I want you to train yourself. And at first, it's going to be something you have to do mindfully. You're going to have to do it deliberately. It's not natural, and you're going to have to force yourself to do it. But you do it, and you do it, and you do it, and it becomes natural. You know, there's in education, they talk about 4 stages of learning any skill. That the first level is called unconscious incompetence. The next is called conscious incompetence. Then there's conscious competence, and then finally there's unconscious competence. So what is that? First level, unconscious incompetence. I don't know how to do the skill, and I don't even realize that I don't know how to do it. I'm ignorant of my own lack of ability. Okay, that's the first level. I didn't even realize it was a thing. I didn't know it was a thing. Oh, writing to the Rebbe about good things all the time. I didn't even know it. Of course I'm bad at it because I didn't know it was a thing. Okay, so then you find out it's a thing. So then it becomes conscious incompetence. Now I am aware that I'm bad at something. Okay, so then the next thing is, hopefully right away, is conscious competence. I can do it, but I have to force myself. I have to be conscious of it. If I don't remind myself to do it, I don't do it because it's not natural to me. But then after a while, you do it so often, unconscious competence. You become good at it without even having to think about it because it's just hergel, nice, tava. The habit becomes natural. It just flows. So the Rebbe is saying like this. It's not natural for you. I know. Obviously it's not natural for you because you're not doing it. But please tell the Chassidim to just get used to doing this, and it's going to become a habit for you. Now, watch what happens next. Watch what happens next. You're going to make it habit, and then it'll become nature. Shegam bedarke hatava yeh nirgish shinui bekiven zeh, that you're going to see that your nature will become changed along this track. Shetisraba hasimcha beinyonehem, that you're going to have more simcha in your life. You follow? You follow what the Rebbe just said there? You know, I know people who write a gratitude list. That every morning when they wake up, before they go out into the world, before they start having to process stimuli, they get their brain on track. They write a gratitude list. I'm going to write 20 things that I'm grateful for. What is the Rebbe saying here? The Rebbe is saying, habituate yourself to write to me about good news, and you will naturally become a happier, more positive, optimistic person. That's what the Rebbe said, that there will become more simcha in your life. If you follow what the Rebbe said, if it becomes habit to you to write and to report simcha, so you're going to become like a journalist who's always looking for a scoop. You always need to write something. You need to report something. So you're going to be looking for it. Our nature is we always look for problems. If you know that you have to write to the Rebbe, whether you're ready to or not, whether you're in the mood to or not, whether you feel like you have what to write or not, but you know you're going to have to write and you're going to have to report good things. So you're going to become trained at spotting all the good things in your life. This is what the Rebbe is saying here. So now we can start to kind of understand what the Rebbe is saying about, I wish you would write more often. It would be good for you. It would be better for your life. You would have less problems in your life. Why? Because the Rebbe is saying, if you know that you have to regularly write to me about good things, you're going to have to become good at, I spy with my little eye, something simchadik, something happy, something good news. And you're going to see more of that stuff. Okay. So this is already worth the price of admission. I'm a happy guy. I mean, this is, you don't get better than this. But you do, because if you keep reading, it does get better than this. This is only subjectively, which is already pretty good. But this is only subjectively, meaning if you're going to train yourself to look for the positive, because you know you have to write good news to the Rebbe all the time, you're going to start seeing more positive stuff, and you're going to be more happy. Okay. But now the Rebbe is going to say that it's going to even make your life better objectively, not just subjectively from your perspective, objectively. It's going to make your life better from a objective stance. I don't know any other way to say it. Okay, how's that going to happen? I understand positive thinking, reframing, have a good attitude, look at the bright side, glass half full. But you're going to tell me the glass is actually going to get more full because I see it as half full? Yes, 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 and yes. And yes, watch this. Va'ayin gam kein zoyer chelik beis kuf pei dalad omid beis dibra maschel to chazi. Go look at the Zohar, and the Rebbe sends you to the Zohar. He says, ayin, go look at it good. Now, I recognized the Zohar when I saw the Maramokim. This Zohar there's a famous sikh about Betochen, about Moshe Rabbeinu, about Ochei Neida Hadaver, about Moshe Rabbeinu who got afraid that Pare found out that he killed the Ish Mitzri. An incredible sikh about Trach Gut Vetzain Gut and the mechanics of that and how it's not just positive thinking, it's not just reframing, but it actually objectively changes the reality. It's what they started calling, the newfangled way they started talking about it the past 10, 15 years, the law of attraction. This is old stuff, by the way. If you really want to know the history of it, it started with the New Thought movement back in the 1930s. Like Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, that kind of stuff, which I think is one of the best-selling books in English, at least from the 20th century. Probably one of the best-selling books. That was all New Thought movement stuff. Anyways, the whole premise of that was about Trach Gut, Vetzain Gut, Lahavdil, but the idea of thinking actually causes things to change objectively in the universe around you. It's not just that you take it better or you perceive it better, but actually it becomes better because of the way you thought about it. You look in the Zohar over there. So the Zohar says that the way Hashem made the world, there's, see, they call it the law of attraction. It's not a law of attraction, it's a law of reciprocity. The Zohar there explains the law of reciprocity. Those are the words that I'm giving to it, but here are the mechanics that the Zohar there explains. That the way that a person subjectively feels about reality as it's being created is going to be mirrored back on high and then mirrored back. So like boom, 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 right? That's the technical word for it. Boom, boom, boom. And the way that you feel about your life is actually going to change the course of your life. Because when the person is besimcha, they give him more to be besimcha about. The rich get richer. The rich get richer. Not just subjectively that you feel better about what you were going to get anyway, but objectively, it increases the happy things that come to you. So the Rebbe says like this: if you are going to know that it's part of your, I was going to say daily routine. I know people who do it daily, but that's too intimidating. maybe even if I say weekly routine, it's too intimidating. But if you know it's your regular routine, I'm going to say regular. You talk to your mashpia, Selech Harab, Mistalik Minasofik. If you know it's part of your regular routine, you have to write happy news to the Rebbe. So what's going to happen? You're going to start looking. You're going to constantly on the lookout for happy stuff. When you're constantly on the lookout for happy stuff, you're going to subjectively feel happier because that's your gratitude list, right? Your gratitude list is going to make you realize how much you have to be grateful for. But then when you start subjectively feeling better about your life, it's going to rebound up there and it's going to come back down. Law of reciprocity. Like the Zohar says, and objectively, you're going to have more in your life to be happy about. So this is what the Rebbe is saying. It's not blackmail, God forbid, where the Rebbe is saying, if you're not going to write to me, like if you don't forward this chain letter, the last 10 people didn't forward this chain, God forbid. The Rebbe is saying, I'm offering you something that's going to make your life better. So please take me up on this offer, on this opportunity. Okay. V'hirotzein sheyesh shliach toiv lahachdir minhag zeh hatoiv. May it be Hashem's will that you be the emissary, a good emissary, or an emissary of good. It has a double meaning there. To spread this good custom, lo yirak b'hanegeh la'atzmei, not just for yourself, ela l'chol svivasei, everyone around you. So the Rebbe is saying, listen, be my messenger. Please tell everyone that this is a good thing. Don't keep this secret to yourself. I don't want this to be a secret. I want everybody to know this. Okay, let's continue. Now, Nasi, I enjoyed. And now, I couldn't help but think when I was reading this letter that if the guy would have written the letter a month earlier, this could have been the entire response. In other words, the guy could have written to the Rebbe about starting this year and not mentioning any problems because he didn't yet have the problem, and maybe he wouldn't have had the problem. So this is the way I was looking at it. Like, if the guy wrote the letter a month earlier, the Rebbe's response, the whole response could have started with Nanesi. I enjoyed I enjoyed that you wrote about the shiurim. In other words, that was the whole reason you needed to write to me, the real reason you needed to write to me, to tell me about the shiurim. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed reading about the shiurim, that you set up the classes. I don't know why we had to go through that whole thing, that you had to have problems, that you had to become a Torah chassid to come and write to me. We could have sidestepped that whole issue. All right. So I enjoyed that you wrote to me about the shiurim. Ubevade mishtadlim kol hamishtatvim lahamshich oid anoshim. And certainly, I'll listen what the Rebbe says here, and I want everyone here to take this to heart. You're listening to this, you're enjoying this, you like this is helping you. Please listen to these words and take them personally. The Rebbe tells the person who's giving the shiur, I hope that everyone who's taking part in this shiur is drawing in other people. Kol echad ve'echad, every one of them. In other words, don't say, oh yeah, I think there's someone in this class who's bringing other people. No, everyone in the class, every individual. If you're enjoying this right now, you got to bring people in, l'shi'urei, to this class. I thought about this, whether this was corny, but I think, no, it's actually, I think it's sincere, and I think it's important. The Rebbe is saying right now, if you're participating in a class, actually the Rebbe is writing to the guy who's giving the class, so I'm taking it personally, that the guy who's giving the class should make sure that everyone who's taking part of the class should bring in other people to the class. Are you enjoying this? You find this meaningful? This is a nice hachana for Yud Aleph Nissen? Okay. So go take the link. Go up to your browser. You're watching this on some device right now. Go cut and paste that link and send it out as a text or WhatsApp and email to 5 people. Or go put it on a group. Put it on a group, then you could post it once. Go send it to 5 people and say, right now, I'm enjoying this. This has added value to my life. Because I want to tell you something. It's beautiful. The feedback that we've been getting about this hachana is beautiful. Be'echos. But kamos, I'm a little bit frustrated. Be'echos, I'm saying qualitatively, some of the feedback is it's just beautiful. What people are writing and how much it's enriching their lives and how much meaning they're finding in it. I mean, I'm blown away by it. But bekamos, quantitatively, sorry, I mean, quality is more important than quantity. That's true, but quantity is also good. So I think we need to have some quantitative goals here that everyone who's watching should bring in another person. So however many people, it sounds very crass to say it like this, but whatever the count was, however many people watched, let's say class 1, because most people are going to start from the beginning. I don't know. Some people psychologically, they want to start from class 1. Other people will just start from whatever class we're up to today. But if you go look at how many views are on class 1, I would hope that and I think that we could do it, that by tomorrow we could have that number doubled. And I think we should double it. And I think this is called taking these words to heart. So I've been talking about this for a long time, meaning 2 minutes, but I've been doing it to give you time, to buy time for you to cut and paste that link from your browser and send it to 5 people. So I think by now you've done it. Okay, so we'll go back to the letter. Ubevade la meiser la eire shiadaber v'yavorim izman lazman gam al dvar demarum von chassidus hadreiche seha u'minageha. It is certainly superfluous for me to mention to you that when you're giving the shiur, when you're giving the class, that not only you're explaining what it says on the page, but you're also explaining the arum. That's the Yiddish word for the environment or the background of Chassidus and its customs and it's guidance for us. In other words, when you're learning, let's say, a maimer or a sicha, there's actually learning the content, what the text is teaching. But then, if you give a class, you got to give the lachluchas, like we call it, the juice. And the juice is you fill it in with some descriptive stories about the lives of Chassidim and day-to-day stuff, and not just the ideas, the abstractions, or the mystical concepts that we're learning, but describe a little bit. Stories are very powerful for this, about what this kind of life looks like on a day-to-day basis, in real people's lives. So that's important. And by the way, I've been trying very hard to do that in this class, to give a lot of the background and to talk about some of the people involved as much as I can find out, and give you stories and fill in the historical background for the letters. So that's, that's an approach to giving a shiur that obviously something that I got from the way that Rebbe told people to give classes. Okay. Hashem should give you success with your students and those that you influence. Okay, one more paragraph. Regarding your question, he asked a question about tzedakah, about giving meiser. He's taking off 1/10 of his earnings to give to tzedakah. The Rebbe mentions parenthetically, by the way, you said meiser, which means 1/10. I hope you're doing a little bit more than 1/10. Like we know, our sages say not to be overly meticulous. Don't go to the decimal point. Round up when it comes to meiser. So the Rebbe says regarding the meiser, and it should be just round up a little bit. The Rebbe says you can include within the meiser funds, the tzedakah that you're giving in honor of Yud Shvat, of Purim, of Yud Beis Tammuz. These are various different funds that the Rebbe's office administered. Now with blessings for good news in all of the above, and the Rebbe signs his name. Again, a good week, a good month. Happy Pesach preparations, and let's look for good things to be grateful about. Let's write to the Rebbe more often, and let's bring some more people to this class. Okay.